Hey guys, it's Haley and welcome to another bookish video. Today I have another installment of my top 12 recommendation series, but for this month we are focusing on Black authors for Black History Month. February is in fact Black History Month, if you didn't know, so I wanted to love on some of my favorite Black authors and recommend my top 12 books by Black authors for you guys. This is not just going to be horror and thriller books. I didn't want to limit it to that because there are some authors that I really love who write outside that genre that I really wanted to talk about in this video. So yeah, we are branching out outside of my usual genre. And before we get into the book recommendations, I do want to thank the sponsor of today's video, which is Dossier. Y'all know all about Dossier. I've talked about them so many times before. They come in these cute little boxes, and Dossier's whole thing is quality perfumes that look absolutely gorgeous. Look at this little bottle here. And they smell exactly like designer fragrances, but without the designer price point. There are absolutely no markups. So the one that I have right here is Ambery Vanilla. And the top notes in this fragrance are mandarin, pear, pink pepper, and licorice. It is inspired by YSL Black Opium. And let me tell you guys, I wear this one every other day. I oscillate between this one and Woody Sandalwood by Dossier. This smells exactly like Black Opium. I get compliments all the time on this one. And then they also sent over the perfume that is inspired by Lancome's La Vie Est Belle, Gourmand Orange Blossom on their website. It smells exactly like it, and my mom's gonna be very, very happy about that. She loves that Lancome scent, but she's always just like hesitating making the purchase because it's a little too expensive. You see a $200 bottle of perfume sitting in your cart and you do not want to click checkout, and that is not a problem with Dossier because their scents smell exactly like the fragrances you love, but down to such an affordable price point. I am talking between $49 and $29. I've seen some sales where they go on sale for $19. You can get this massive bottle of premium fragrance for $19. Isn't that crazy? Dossier scents always last a super long time on me and my clothes. They've never irritated my skin, and again, I get so many compliments on them. It is literally exactly like stepping into Sephora and purchasing a luxury fragrance, but you get to save a little bit of coin, and you can spend that on new books. So if you want to try out Dossier, as always, my link will be down below. Make sure to use my code Haley_10 for 10% off. And thank you so much to Dossier for sponsoring this video. Now let's go ahead and get into the book recs. First up, I want to talk about probably my most favorite book on this list, which I do not have in my hands right now because I've been literally passing it around to all my family and friends, telling them, you have to read this book, you have to read this book, you need to read this book before you die. It was one of my very favorites of last year, so if you watch my best books of 2022 video, then you've already heard me talk about it, but you deserve to hear me talk about it again, and that is Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. This is a thriller that reads like an action movie. From page one, the action does not stop. We are following two dads who tragically lost their sons, and their sons were in a relationship together, and the dads are kind of, you know, older, not with the times. They don't really understand their sons' sexualities. But what they're not going to do is stand for the injustice of their sons' murders, alleged murders. They believe that their sons were murdered for being gay. So they go on a quest to get revenge. And one of the dads is a white guy who is just so out of touch. He literally has no idea what's going on. And then the other guy is this Black guy who is subtly trying to educate the white guy, but also like he has his faults as well. He doesn't really understand his son's sexuality and he's really struggling with that. So they're both kind of clunkily helping each other along. They're this very unlikely duo, and they go on this crazy journey, and it sounds like, oh, very quirky, like the way that I'm talking about it, and it could come across that way, but S.A. Cosby writes with such amazing empathy. I felt the characters' emotions in every single page, and this book flew by. It was so fast-paced. It's really hard to have a fast-paced, action-packed book coupled with really strong emotions that come across very clearly, and I felt exactly what the characters were feeling. I love this book so much. I could talk about it all day, and I cannot wait to read Blacktop Wasteland by S.A. Cosby, which I also have on my shelves, and I'm planning on picking up soon. Next up, let's talk about a recent read for me, and that is Someone Had to Do It by Amber and Danielle Brown. I freaking adore this book. I love this book. If you are a thriller lover like myself and you can read about rich people drama, celebrity drama, you just want the juiciest, most salacious drama you could ever read about in a thriller, this is your girl. This was such an easy 5-star read for me. We are following Taylor, who is this like white influencer girl, and Brandy, who is an intern at this fashion house where Taylor is like kind of affiliated, I guess. And they end up running into each other at a party. These two very different women, their paths cross, their lives converge when Brandy overhears Taylor talking about a plot to murder her father. So Brandy quickly gets caught up in this world, and she has a lot of things stacked against her in the fashion industry, so she's going to use every single rung on the ladder that she can to climb up to the top and make a name for herself. And at the same time, Taylor is literally crazy. Like, oh, these women are unhinged. They feel like very real people. Like, I love reading about flawed women that feel really real. And that is what this book did. I also loved the commentary in here about race and privilege. Y'all know I cannot just read a thriller that's like a straightforward fun time and give it 5 stars. It's not gonna be that for me. You need that little extra something to say to get a 5-star out of me, and this one definitely has it. Also, just like the aesthetic and vibes of this book, very fun to read from. If you like rich people drama, reading about opulence, this. The next recommendation, it is one book, but truly I want to recommend this author's entire backlist, and that is The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson. This is just the one that I chose to feature for Tiffany D. Jackson because it is one of my favorite books of the past year, and it is probably, yeah, it's definitely my favorite of all of Tiffany D. Jackson's work, but really you can't go wrong with any of her books. I've given every single one of her books that I've read, which I believe I've read all except for one, 4.5 or 5 stars. So she just writes bangers, and her YA thrillers, I know you might get freaked out hearing that they're YA, she takes them to that darker place that you really want it to go. Not only with like gore and triggering subjects, but also to a deeper place of commentary, kind of like I was talking about in regards to the last book, where there's something to say in every single one of Tiffany D. Jackson's books. But especially in The Weight of Blood, this is a Carrie retelling about a school that still has a segregated prom and what happens when they integrate for the first time as this mixed student who has been white passing her entire life is revealed, her secret is revealed, and they know that she's mixed, that she's half black, and she is kind of our Carrie White-esque character. And she goes ham at the prom, getting revenge on all the people who were completely racist and horrible to her growing up. I always think it's super interesting to read about colorism. I don't think that's something that's talked about as nearly as much as racism when we're thinking about commentary written by Black authors. And this definitely has a lot of that, which I appreciated. It's better than the original Carrie. Like, I don't know how much I can rave about this book. Please read it. It is phenomenal. And read all of Tiffany D. Jackson's books. To be quite honest, she's just chef's kiss amazing, never misses. And while we're on the topic of books that have commentary about colorism, I would also want to recommend The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. This book is the reason why I wanted to expand this video beyond thriller and horror books, because I need to talk about Britt Bennett. I absolutely love the writing in this book so much. I remember reading this book so vividly. I was reading and listening along with the audiobook, and I can remember the voices of the people who narrated this audiobook because it struck me so deeply. It was one of my favorite books of the year that it came out, 2020, and it was easily in my top 5 of that reading year. It's just so good. So this is a historical fiction, and that is normally not what I would read, I know, but this one is so different. Even if you're not a historical fiction reader, I really encourage you to pick this one up. We are following twin girls who were separated at birth. They lived completely different lives, and they're both white passing, but one of them chose to live as a Black woman, and the other one, she didn't say that she wasn't Black, but she's pretty much living as a white woman. And we see how their lives were so different. And it has, again, just so much commentary on colorism, which as a white person, I didn't even think about before reading this book, I'll be honest. Both of the girls' stories are so touching, and it has these deep themes of generational trauma. There's also really great queer and trans representation in this book. It's just so all-encompassing. It taught me a lot. It was written with such empathy and understanding, and it's really strongly character-driven. So if you are a character-driven reader like myself, I think you're gonna love this one. And I know that I'm talking about this book as if it's just like general historical fiction, but to me personally, there were some twists in this book, okay? There were some turns, there were some reveals. So if you think this is gonna be boring, it's not. Let's get into a bit of horror, shall we? I want to talk about Daymares by Kenya Moss Dime. This is a short story collection, and I picked it up because there's like a creepy, like, I thought this was a child in a nightgown on the cover, but apparently someone commented and they were like, Hailey, that's not a child. But I read the description and it was like, oh, all of these creepy kid stories. Y'all? Possibly my favorite short story of all time is in this collection, and it is about this little evil baby. It's like Rosemary's Baby inspired, and it's like how a baby can just like torture a woman from the inside of her body and she literally can't escape it. It is seriously phenomenal. It was horrifying. My guts were like twisting as I was reading it, and all of these short stories follow motherhood or children, creepy kids in some way. So if you're like me and you love that kind of a trope in horror, you're gonna love this collection. Overall, I gave the collection 3.5 out of 5 stars, but there were 4 stories that I would rate 4 stars or above. So they were really phenomenal for the most part. And this one is available on Kindle Unlimited. So I just do want to mention that you can go read it for free right now if you have Kindle Unlimited. And this book is super underrated. I haven't heard anybody talk about it. So go show this author some love. Another favorite of mine, which I don't know if it's still on Kindle Unlimited, but I believe it was at one point. Don't quote me on that. But the Molly Southbourne series, y'all know I absolutely love this series. It's a series of 3 little tiny horror novellas that are kind of sci-fi inspired that follow our main character, Molly Southbourne. And the thing about Molly is that when she bleeds, it spawns a clone. Another Molly just like comes up out of nowhere. But this isn't just like a normal old Molly that's just gonna sit there and be like, hey girl. No, the clone is murderous and is trying to kill the original Molly and take her place. So it's all about our main character trying to navigate her life growing up, living this way as she, you know, gets paper cuts, has her period, etc., all the ways that you bleed, and for her spawns clones. She's such a great main character to follow, and I love following from her perspective. She's kind of like sarcastic and catty and cutthroat. She reminds me of the main character in the Girl in 6E series. So if you love reading from female characters like that, you will love Molly and fall in love with her just like I did. It's disturbing, it's emotional, it's funny, it's relatable, it's just really everything. The first book is far and away the best in the series, but I think the rest of the series is worth reading as well. Jumping back into YA, a thriller that definitely does not get talked about enough is Ace of Spades by Farida Abike Iyamide. I hope I said her name right. And the amazing thing about this author is I believe she was 20 years old when she wrote this book, 19 or 20 years old when she wrote this book. The talent, is that not insane? This is a YA thriller that kind of has dark academia vibes. It is set at a prestigious private school, and it follows this Gossip Girl-esque scenario where two of our main characters that we're following are being blackmailed by this anonymous texter who is threatening to reveal their secrets. And all of this drama comes up, but the stakes are a lot higher than our two main characters are expecting. Things go off the rails. If you love an explosive thriller that starts out just like with catty drama and has way bigger implications towards the end, you're gonna love this one. And again, this one is super, super character driven. So I fell in love with both of the characters that we're following. They are also both queer characters, which I really loved following as well. And there's a ton of commentary in here about what it's like to be a young queer Black person. So if you're interested in reading about that experience in a way that's not necessarily like educational, you know, in a way that's like fun, juicy drama, this one is so, so good. Another thriller I absolutely love is My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. And this one is set in Nigeria, I believe, which is really cool. I have never read another book set in Nigeria. And we are following our main character who's, if you could believe it, sister is a serial killer. So her sister will call her in a panic every so often and have her come clean up after the mess that she made with her now ex-boyfriend. And our main character is getting really sick of this, and we start to see what happens when she gets burnt out with her role as the cleanup crew for her serial killer sister. It is so, so fun and fast-paced. I believe I read this in a night. It's like 200 something pages, so it's a really easy read. And it's really similar to something like My Lovely Wife or the Mindfuck series, where you're following that serial killer POV. You feel like you're in on the info and you're rooting for our main characters to just get away with it without the police finding out. It's so tense, so suspenseful. And again, a lot of these books that I'm realizing now are very, very heavily character driven because our main character, we are so, so aligned with her. We're rooting for her the whole time. Another just easy, fun read that has a little bit more to say. That is like the theme of this video. Taking a hard left into romance, I did want to talk about my favorite romance by a Black author, and y'all can probably guess who that is, Miss Talia Hibbert. I'm absolutely in love with her writing style, and the book that I want to recommend, my favorite by her, although I do recommend all of her books, is Get a Life, Chloe Brown. I know that this is not a lot of people's favorite book of the Brown Sisters trilogy, but it is mine, and I will stand by Miss Chloe until the end of time. I love her so, so much. Her voice, I know some people say it's like cynical and grating, but for me, that is my inner monologue at all time. So I really related to her. She also struggles with a chronic illness, which I loved that representation. And she has this kind of enemies to lovers romance with her, what do you call it? Not landlord, like the guy who like does the little fixer-upper things around her apartment complex. Yeah, she has some tension with him. They really get off on the wrong foot, but then they end up coming to a common understanding and of course, falling in love. This book has some great smut. There's one scene in here that literally lives rent-free in my head. I cried at the end of it. It is just one of the best romances that I have read. And I love the rest of the Brown Sisters trilogy as well. So I really recommend all of them. This was just my favorite. I love Miss Chloe. Next up, I want to talk about one of my favorite books from last year, and one that definitely does not get talked about enough. And that is The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta. I could literally rave about this book all day. I have so many of these passages highlighted. Like, oh my God, let me try to find a good one that I can read you, because I cannot just describe the writing style to you. I need to read it so you understand what I'm talking about when I say this is literally gorgeous. So this book is written in verse. It's all about our main character here who is mixed, and he is like growing up trying to figure out not only his racial identity, but his sexual orientation, how he wants to identify and label with himself. He's really struggling with labels that feel really, really limiting. And obviously I cannot relate to being a person of color, but I did relate a lot to that feeling of labels. Just like going on this journey, trying to label myself as a queer person is really, really difficult. And I felt so seen reading this book. The conversations about sexuality are so nuanced and beautifully written because they're written in verse. Like, let me share this little paragraph with you. It says, "I don't want to explain myself to people. I've seen how you do it, how people ask you questions like they have a right to see you and your family tree. I don't want that. I just want to be me." Hello? It's just written with this straightforward way that just, it's so emotionally bare. It's just like laying it all out there. It makes me want to cry thinking about it. This was probably the easiest 5-star read I've maybe ever read in my life. And I never see anyone talk about it, and I don't get a chance to recommend it often because I'm usually talking about thriller and horror books. But if you're going to read any book recommended by me that is outside of those genres, this is the one. Please do it. Because the second half of the book that I haven't even got to tell you about yet is that our main character is helped to like define his identity, his creativity, who he is by the art of drag. So he starts experimenting with makeup, fashion, being a drag queen and performing, and just seeing that journey, seeing him like blossom. Oh my God, it warmed my heart so much. I'm also a big fan of drag, and I love the way that it can be so transformative and expressive for queerness, not only queerness, but just like gender bending and non-conformity. I love it so much, and this book has such a special place in my heart. Please go read it. Jumping back into horror, wow, we're just having like a left, right kind of feeling to this video. I want to talk about a recent read that really struck me, and that was Ring Shout. Oh my gosh. First of all, this audiobook is phenomenal. I highly recommend it. Second of all, this book just has a lot going on. So it's set in the early 1900s, like very weird writing, historical vibes. It's kind of written in that style of like a classic, like To Kill a Mockingbird kind of old English almost, but it has this futuristic twinge, like this little like sci-fi twinge, because there is some kind of like magical elements, like technology advances, and there's also like magical powers, where we are following this group of 3 badass Black women who are out here like vigilante assassins killing these little creatures who are Kluxes, okay? And that's basically like a Ku Klux Klan member, but like a mutated monstrous version of it. So they are going throughout the country fighting off these monsters, and there's also really great commentary on feminism, obviously racism, because it's literally talking about the KKK. But beyond the commentary, it is just action-packed. There is always something going on, and we really delve into the lives of these 3 main female characters. It's so action-packed and exciting, but here's the thing. It does have a little bit of weird pacing. Like, it kind of weirded me out, the juxtaposition between the historical and the futuristic, but then also the pacing is like the chapters are really long. So just be prepared for like a weird little fever trip of a ride when you read this book, because I definitely thought it was going to be like a short little quick novella, and it was so much more than that, which caught me by surprise, but I also felt unprepared for. So just be prepared for that pacing if you go into this. It is so good. It's such effective horror, but also the weirdness is there, so just be aware of that. And then going into my last pick, my 12th book for our top 12 recommendations, we have The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. Oh, really? Just like Tiffany D. Jackson, I'm recommending Elizabeth Acevedo's entire backlist. I've given every single book she has ever written 5 stars. What can I say? Her writing style just clicks with me. This book is another one similar to The Black Flamingo that is written in verse, and it is just gorgeous. We are following a young mixed girl who is trying to get in touch with herself as a woman. She's growing up. I believe she's like 14, like 13, 14, 15, around there. So she is entering adolescence, going through the trenches of it and trying to figure out her sexuality, her racial identity, being a mixed little gal, and also how she is as a woman, how her femininity can show up for her within the context of her race, her religion, and her sexuality. So she's struggling with a lot and she's coping with it through slam poetry. And we read a lot of her slam poetry. It is so impactful. Another super character-driven story. And I just love this girl so much. This is another one that I was highlighting the house down, especially the stuff with religious trauma. That, ooh, I really related to that, and sexuality in that context as well. It's so beautiful, so relatable, even for me, like a little white girl reading this book about a little girl of color. Obviously could not relate to all of it, but the pieces about sexuality were just incredible. And I'm sure the representation for the people of color was great as well, because Elizabeth Acevedo herself is Black. I actually believe that she is mixed, exactly like our main character of this book. So just nothing but good things to say about her and all of her books. She's so freaking talented. And that's gonna round it out. My top 12 books by Black authors. Please go support these authors and please buy from an independent bookstore if you can. And if you're wanting to read them, mark them to read on Storygraph. I know I always tell you guys switch over to Storygraph, but it is so much better. Okay, they're not in their beta phase anymore. They are like fully established. They are exactly like Goodreads. So why are you gonna use Goodreads? Go use Storygraph because it is owned and it was started by two amazing Black women. So go support them, support these authors, and have a wonderful rest of your February. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Don't forget to go down below and check out Dossier. Thank you again to them for sponsoring this video. Use my code and get yourself some luxury fragrances for a great price. Like this video if you liked it. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And don't forget to go to therapy and read a book this week. I will see you guys in my next video, which should be a thriller vlog. I will see you then. Bye.